This is the Future Talent Podcast, a future-focused podcast series showing the channels that enterprise can engage today to empower their current employees and future-proof the talent pipeline of tomorrow. This series is brought to you by Technological University Dublin's Enterprise Academy. We create learning solutions to enable your business success. Want to find out how we can support your learning and development needs? Visit www.tudublin.ie/enterprise-academy to book in a call with our team.
Welcome to the second series of the Future Talent Podcast. Today, we dive into Navigating Education 5.0, Learning in the Age of AI, featuring an outstanding panel of experts who bring a wealth of knowledge and insight into the transformative power of artificial intelligence in education and training. Our distinguished guests include Seamus McGrath, the Public Sector Lead at IBM Consulting, who discusses IBM's pivotal shift towards integrating AI into their core business. Seamus shares great stories about IBM's long history with AI, from the legendary Deep Blue chess match to the innovative Watson project. Joining him is Gemma Dunn, the Training Content Manager at Intel, who reveals how Intel is leveraging AI to revolutionize its learning and development programs. Gemma provides an insider's look at how AI is used to create efficient training modules and the exciting potential of generative AI in content creation. We also have Damian Gordon, a seasoned lecturer in the School of Computer Science at TU Dublin. Damian offers a unique perspective on the impact of AI tools like ChatGPT on third-level education, highlighting both the opportunities and challenges these technologies present. Throughout this episode, our panel delves into various aspects of Education 5.0, from the practical applications of AI in corporate and educational settings to the ethical considerations and the future landscape of AI-driven learning. Join us for an enlightening conversation exploring how emerging technologies are reshaping the way we learn, teach, and develop skills in the digital age. And finally, our thanks to Hugh McCabe, recent Enterprise Academy Fellow and Lecturer at TU Dublin, who excellently moderated the panel discussion.
Thanks, everybody. We are here for our first panel of the day, which is called Navigating Education 5.0, Learning in the Age of AI. So before we get into the topic at hand, I think job titles and organisation names only tell us so much. So I might ask each of you, if you don't mind, to say a little bit more about what you do and what your role is. Seamus.
Hi, as Hugh said, I'm Public Sector Lead. That means that any work that we, services that we deliver from the consulting side of the IBM, the consulting wing of IBM, I'm responsible for ensuring we deliver it well and that our clients are happy, which I think most of the time they are, and also obviously selling it in the first place. And IBM has a system whereby if you sell something to a client, you also have to deliver it. So a salesman or woman can't go out and sell something at half price and somebody else has to go and deliver it. So I have to stand over anything I sell into the public sector. And it's solutions that we sell. We sold off our technology wing a while ago, which is sort of operating system and below. So we are delivering actual new applications and solutions to business problems. So that's where I spend my time.
Okay, thank you, Seamus. Gemma.
Hi, so my name is Gemma Dunn. I work for Intel. I am the project manager for all of our skills and capabilities learning material. I am the skills and capabilities AI integrator. And before I took on this role, I was one of the global AR and VR coordinators for the Intel company.
Thank you, Gemma. And last but not least, Damian.
Thanks, Gemma. That was a great summary. Thanks, you. My name is Damian Gordon. I'm a lecturer here in TU Dublin. I teach in the computer science department. I've been doing it for about 20 years. Before that, I had a job. It was great. So I used to work in the IT industry, so I would have developed AI systems and VR systems back in the 1990s and early 2000s even. So we used to have it back then. I do a lot of work in disability services and teaching and learning work as well.
Right. Thank you, Damian. So let's just say a little bit to introduce things about what the panel is about. Education 5.0 is a concept put forward by the World Economic Forum. And it encompasses many different things, but maybe the key one for our purposes today is the idea of using various forms of emerging technology, such as AI, such as immersive tech, and encompassing other things as well, as a means of enhancing or enriching training, education, learning and development, and so on. So we'll probably talk about a few different types of technology, I think, over the course of this panel. But I think the main one that's on everybody's mind is obviously artificial intelligence and AI. So we might start by addressing that. So I might start by asking you, Seamus, to talk a little bit about that. IBM have a long history with artificial intelligence. Even all the way back to the first AI programs in the 1950s and 1960s would run on IBM machines, and those machines were even marketed as thinking machines or computer brains or things like that at the time. More recently, we've had the IBM Watson project, which is maybe 15 years old, I think, at this stage. And I think that really reintroduced the concept of artificial intelligence into the public imagination. And then from talking to you last week, you were telling us that IBM have really pivoted towards AI in a much more fundamental way, in the sense that rather than AI maybe being something that IBM do, it's become a core part of the business. Yeah. So maybe you could set the scene a bit by talking to us about that. Would be great.
Thanks, Hugh. Yeah, so certainly I think most people will remember that an IBM product called Deep Blue beat Gary Kasparov, the world chess champion at the time. If you're looking for something to do this evening, you could Google about Watson playing Jeopardy, and that's slightly less well known, but actually probably more interesting, because Watson not only won Jeopardy that night, it was playing against the two best players who had ever played Jeopardy, and those two gentlemen had won literally millions of dollars winning Jeopardy. And IBM, the Watson tool, not only beat them, but beat them pretty well after making a couple of early errors. We've had a long history of AI, and that Jeopardy night actually kicked off the whole re-emergence of AI, which had sort of gone a bit dead prior to that. We probably let the competition get ahead of us again, and certainly OpenAI with their ChatGPT took the lead in terms of getting it all. The hype started again, and there is an element of hype going on. But now IBM is a very different firm to what it was 20 or 30 years ago. So, for example, if you get stuck in a lift with our CEO, Arvind Krishna, he will give the elevator pitch of IBM is a hybrid cloud and AI company, full stop, right? Now, you're only going up one floor, but if he kept talking then, he would point out that really the reason is this. If you look at the way IBM is now structured, we do the IBM consulting, which is delivering the systems that I talked about. But in order to deliver systems, if you ask me to deliver an on-prem solution, I'll almost definitely say no. IBM only delivers on cloud. And all of our systems in some way or other in the future will deliver AI in that. IBM Technologies, our software. Our software is, we have a huge range of AI software solutions. And they're all built so that they can work on a hybrid cloud environment. And the third part is still called infrastructure, but that's actually IBM's own cloud offering, with one exception. We don't build computers with one exception, that's mainframes, believe it or not. And the reason we still build mainframes, well, because the rest of the hardware in the world is a commodity, mainframes still aren't. So IBM still provides mainframes. So they're actually the three main revenue sources for IBM, and they're all based around AI and hybrid cloud. So that's why Arvind will give you that answer. The other way IBM has changed completely is we work much more closely with our partners. So 30 years ago, we were a proprietary firm. We sold IBM kit and software and weren't really interested in that. Now, We work very closely. We have a huge Microsoft practice. We deliver loads of Microsoft services. We are the biggest implementer of SAP systems in the world. We work very closely with Oracle and AWS as well. I've regular meetings with my AWS counterpart in Dublin. So IBM has fundamentally changed in the last 30 years. It's that answer that Arvin gave, he was saying it 3 years ago. And if I was to say, are we getting it right? What I'd suggest you do is Google why have IBM shares gone up in value in the last year or so. And a big part of the answer you'll get in the Google searches because of our offerings in AI. So that's how we've changed.
Yeah, excellent. Just as a follow-up on that, Seamus, it'd be interesting hearing something about your public sector lead.
Yes.
And AI is a big part of IBM's business.
Yes.
How are those two things intersecting? How are IBM,
sure, I
suppose, supporting or deploying AI within the public sector?
Yeah, so that's an interesting challenge that I have at the moment. If I take the cloud part of it first, I would have said 10 years ago, public sector wouldn't use cloud. It was just a closed shop. 5 years ago, they espoused the use of public sector in Ireland, espoused the use of cloud, and actually had a cloud-first policy, but didn't actually do it. Now, public sector are very much saying, yes, we want to use cloud. One example is currently bidding for a HR and payroll system to pay all of the teachers, both primary and secondary in the country, 160,000 staff. That has to be a cloud solution. That's the department have specified a cloud-based solution. So having said that, so I can see cloud has moved. I think AI is where cloud was 5 years ago in public sector. They're interested. We are talking to people like Barry Lowry, the government CIO. But the actual uptake of it is more slow. And I think it's a classic example of AI can permeate very widely across different public departments or government departments. And there's an element then of everybody's problem is nobody's problem. So I know I've talked about things about using AI, but there's no one person in government who will actually take hold of it and make it happen. And I think it's going to take another couple of years before we see it widely adopted.
Yeah, thanks, Seamus. And I think that journey IBM has been through is really interesting, as it's kind of moving from computers into software into provision of services. And it's really, I think, indicative of where the focus of the technology industry has maybe changed over the last while. Gemma, maybe we could turn to you. Intel are another major technology player who are busy working on integrating AI into what you do. Mm-hmm. And as training content manager, you're responsible for thinking about how different forms of emerging tech might be used within learning and development within Intel. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how AI has impacted upon that recently?
Yeah, well, Intel as a company are very committed to AI and how it can advance the learning and development of all our employees. So much so we have mandatory AI training for our global workforce to explain to them what AI is and what it is not, and how it can advance their careers. Then, as far as content creation is concerned, we are really interested in AI, and we're actually running a few pilots at the moment. We are a semiconductor manufacturing business, and every time we have a new technology, which is every few years, we have vast amounts of certification training packages that we need to generate. So approximately 900 certification packages need to be generated to train our employees every, say, 4 years. Right now, each certification package takes 5 to 6 weeks to manually make. So we are now looking at using large learning models and Gen AI to significantly speed up that process. So we have the content, but actually I want to take a step back. It will generate a Rev 0 of the certification packages, but we need to be incredibly careful that Rev 0 is then reviewed by domain experts to ensure that the content is correct, that any tribal knowledge that those domain experts know get included, and then it can be provided to our learners. So it will speed up the content generation process for us significantly, but it will also provide the content to the learner at an earlier stage, which will enable them to learn earlier and quicker, and then have access to the capabilities of the maintenance of the new tool sets at an earlier stage, which will significantly help us. But that's just one of the AI projects we're looking at. We're looking at many. We are using internal AI chatbots to help significantly with training and upskilling also. We have sites all over the world, and we're really trying to centralize the training of those sites. So we're using AI chatbots to connect to all of our internal training sources and the external training sources that our employees have access to, so that our employees can ask a geo-specific training question, and then the chatbot can provide the response to where they can locate that training documentation. There are just some examples. There's many in generative AI that we're utilising, but the semiconductor industry is really restricted because we have to have on-prem versions of AI apps. Because our intellectual property, it cannot ever reside on an external cloud. So we are restricted and we are facing challenges there, but we do have wonderful internal development teams that can develop it on our internal servers.
So if I understand you correctly, Gemma, you need to be very careful about the information which is confidential or commercially sensitive.
Absolutely.
So the AI systems that you use have to be, what was the word you used?
It's an internal or ring-fenced cloud.
Ring-fenced, yeah. So we're not sending information out to OpenAI's model, for example, which then becomes part of the general corpus of text that the models are trained on. Yeah. Okay, interesting.
We find that out early on.
I think that there's a question about reliability and so on that I want to ask you guys about, but I might just park that for the moment and turn to Damian. I'm sure, Damian, like myself, the widespread availability of systems like ChatGPT, which suddenly exploded onto our consciousness in, I think it was November 22, I think it was, had a huge impact on the things we do every day. So do you want to talk a little bit about undergraduate education? What are the opportunities it's introduced? What are the challenges or the problems you've had to face?
No. That's okay. No, thanks very much. Definitely, even before ChatGPT came along, the summer before, summer 2022, I spent all summer just playing around with different tools because I could see this was a coming problem, to say the least. I suppose if I was to roughly divide the students into 3 groups, you've got the very smart students who are using it as you'd expect, as a scaffold, as a first draft, as a go. You've got the very silly students who don't use it at all, and then the sneaky students who are using it and trying to pass off ChatGPT or some tools work as their own. But they're so silly, they don't even know how to do it well. So if people who've used ChatGPT will recognize the style of it, it's an introduction paragraph at the start, there's 6 or 7 bullet points afterwards with heading.
Keywords.
And then there's a little conclusion at the end, so we get used to that. So, but then in the past year, I think students have become so postmodern about this. I got an assignment a few weeks ago where the opening line was, as a large language model, I cannot comment on this particular thing. ... Ha 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 ha. Only joking, Damian. I didn't use ChatGPT for my assignment. So they're already over so much. I think we can see the things it's good at and the things it's bad at. For me, in terms of how to use it as a tool, it's for example, I'll write a piece of text and I'll get ChatGPT to generate a piece of text and just ask the students, which do you think was the human and which do you think was the robot? And I seem to be failing the Turing test a lot myself personally at the moment. So they get very confused as to which. So we can teach a lot of exciting things, simple things like academic writing or citation, but discernment and judgment by asking them even an activity I asked my first years to do was just, I taught them a topic and then said, keep asking ChatGPT questions until you've asked it 25 questions or until you get to a point where it gives you a wrong answer. And the wrong answer usually is within 7 to 8 questions. It gives an incorrect answer about a topic if they know about it already. Wrong is a broad term, though. It could be, because a lot of the data that these systems are trained on in English primarily is American-based. It could be that the Americans use a term slightly differently than the way we use it. Or it could be something quite atrociously wrong. So that is very interesting. For me, what I'm trying to teach the students is that I see AI at the moment, the way we're using it, as an umbrella term for a range of good practices, particularly in businesses that have been going on for years. Data process re-engineering or knowledge management or data science or cloud. So visualizations, dashboards, AR, VR, extended reality, all of these ideas are now being kind of reframed and put under the umbrella of AI, but the majority of techniques we're looking at, I think, have been there for years and years, and it might be just, a lot of it is a rebranding. I think 90% of it is good business practices, good modeling, good customer interactions, but then the potentiality, I think, is quite exciting. The first thing I do with the students is ask it, go on to ChatGPT and ask it, is Daniel O'Donnell related to Daniel O'Connell? And it says correctly, no. But it says, although they have the same last name, they are not related. So because I suppose 99.999% of the time, if people ask the question, is X related to Y, they have the same last surname. So just by asking that, you show, okay, this is goofy stuff. You can't really trust it. And obviously, there's a range of ethical issues as well. But I think as a teaching tool, it's very exciting.
And I suppose that speaks to the idea of, well, within media schools, a big part of what we try and do is encourage critical literacy among students and understanding media and developing a kind of critical awareness about information and where it comes from. And I suppose what we have to try and do with students is develop that kind of critical awareness of AI systems as well. So we don't take for granted what they produce. We understand the processes and we understand the advantages and the potential problems as well, maybe.
I would love if we could approach it with the journalist approach of two independent sources of information. That kind of thinking is the way we want to be doing it in a way.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Simon. So I want to talk about reliability, but before I do that, I think it'd be good to Gemma. Do you want to pick up on I know Intel have been very heavily involved in the use of both virtual reality and augmented reality for training. I think probably for similar kind of reasons in that you need
really
to train
similar.
employees in environments that you can't just kind of fling them into willy-nilly. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you guys have been doing that?
So we started our AR VR journey in 2018. We primarily focused on VR. Again, we're a clean room environment. So in the clean room environment in Intel, we've significant safety procedures. Our airflow isn't as much as an issue. I think we are 2 levels below what pharmaceutical needs to work at. So we really focused on VR. We had a VR room with 4 tethered headsets because we needed that processing power. Back whenever we done our environmental scan, 2018, the Oculus was the best headset for us to use at that time. So we have a VR room with 4 tethered headsets, and we were able to put a large percentage of our employees through virtual safety training for the clean room. And it was a huge success initially. So we had VR working quite well, and then we started investigating AR. Initially, when we done our AR, we utilised a product called Daiquiri, which is no longer on the market. Then following another environmental scan, we went on to the HoloLens 2 headset. The reason we used the HoloLens 2 headset for augmented reality at the time was because it was a non-tethered headset. So in a clean room environment, when somebody's using a bunny suit, you don't want them to have a anything tethered to have in their pockets. Also, the glass on the front of the HoloLens 2 was actually safety glass, and the headsets themselves were compatible with our PPE gear. This meant that we could have people in the clean room environment using the HoloLens 2. So we have 3 primary use cases for augmented reality. We have BIM modelling. So we do a lot of new factories all over the world. And for BIM modelling, they can model where the tools are actually going to be placed in the layout of the large factory. We can ensure that laterals have been placed or pop-outs for the laterals have been cut in the right location. So BIM modelling has a fantastic use case and still actively being used today throughout our VF network, our virtual factory network. We have remote assist, which significantly helped during COVID pandemic. Remote assist is the ability for someone to put a HoloLens 2 or any augmented reality headset, I should say, on their head and make a phone call from a clean room environment. So during COVID, the site practically locked down. We had very few people in the clean room. So if a tool went down or if there was an issue with the tool, one of our technicians could pop the HoloLens 2 on their head and then phone an expert from anywhere in our global network and show them what was happening on the tool live, and that expert could walk them through how to resolve that issue. I can tell you that we had 2 factories that would have went lines down during the COVID pandemic if it wasn't for the use of the HoloLens 2 and our augmented reality. And then our third use case is training in augmented reality. So we used a product called Microsoft Guides. Microsoft Guides allowed us to take our certified procedures. So I mentioned we were using AI to help us generate our certification packages in a more lean and efficient manner. Those certification packages, we were able to translate them into augmented training, so using videos, images, and 3D graphics to teach people how to complete their certification training at the point of activity. So they could repeatedly, when it was quiet, put on a HoloLens 2 and repeatedly practice their certification tasks in a step-by-step manner. We were able to reduce our certification training times by 50% using the augmented reality. And then the quality of the training, when we had them tested at the end of their certification, everyone who used augmented reality to complete their certification training scored higher in their final exams. So augmented reality has significantly helped Intel certify our employees to be able to complete plant maintenance procedures much quicker. Now, if I go back to virtual reality, we had virtual reality in a steady state because we were utilising it when COVID, unfortunately, happened. My room with 4 headsets, I could no longer have 4 people in that room. So we could have had 4 learners in the room with 1 trainer. We would never have had the trainees completing virtual reality training independently. We always would have had a trainer in the room with them. When the pandemic hit, I had to reduce that capacity to 2 people within the room. Then you have to think about our headsets. The headsets that we were using at the time have soft furnishings on the inside. So in order for us to correctly sterilise those, we had to sterilise them and leave them for 48 hours. So all of a sudden, my scalability of VR significantly reduced. So I could have 2 people every 48 hours. So it started to become less useful as a training product and for us to save time. Now we're back in a position where we can come back and revisit virtual reality. And we're looking at virtual reality now, not just as for headsets, but we're also now really interested in using virtual reality and those skills for the gamification of tasks so that we can have highly realistic gamification scenarios where our users aren't restricted to headsets, that they can just open up their laptops and practice these certification procedures time and time again. These practices will never replace for us actually physically doing the procedure in the clean room environment, but it significantly speeds up the learning of the learner. Now, for us, what's very exciting for the future is because we have had a lot of success with AR and VR in the past. So we're a company that are very comfortable with these new technologies, and we find that our employees are really eager to learn in these new ways. So we have that to our advantage. But what's really exciting in the VR space is the idea of Gen AI coupled with virtual reality. So the idea that whenever our technician or engineers who are practicing a task are complete an action, whether that be on a headset or on a PC, that Gen AI will generate what they'll see next. So that's really exciting. I do think that is a few years away, but that's where we will be hopefully moving to in the future. But the VR and the gamification is something that we're now looking at next as our next step.
Interesting. Yeah. I think that there's lots to explore about that, and I know, Damian, you've done a lot of work in this area too. We have a few minutes. I want to throw in one more question and then invite a question or two from the audience, which is this issue of reliability, going back to AI. One of the things we know, for example, about large language models, and Damian alluded to this, is that they don't necessarily know the difference between Damon O'Donnell and Damon O'Connell, or Daniel O'Connell, and whatever their names are. I don't either, obviously. But there is an issue about reliability of information, and because they are essentially generating text from random text assembled from around the internet. Bearing in mind that we need to make distinctions between different forms of AI, and generative AI is not the same thing as other forms of artificial intelligence. If you're dealing, Seamus, with corporate organizations where things like accuracy and reliability and privacy and security are of paramount importance, how do you deal with this? Is this reliability thing a problem? If so, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, so let me make a couple of points on that. Unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember when the internet was a new and exciting thing. But if you're old enough, you'll remember you used to have conversations. Would you really put your credit card number on the internet? If you booked a flight where you're worried that you'd arrive at the airport and somebody go, "You booked it on the internet?" Ooh, I wouldn't have done that now. So there is a reliability issue. I just think it's real. There's no question. But I'm not sure we'll be asking about the reliability issue in about 5 or 10 years. I think it'll be gone. If you were listening to Richie's presentation, he actually answered the question about reliability really well, right? So a fantastic presentation, Richie, I thought. It covered, in my preparation to answer this question, I was going, Richie's there's my next point. So at least the industry is in agreement. Certainly our two businesses are in agreement about it. Let me give you an example, though, a concrete example. Really, it's the use case is very important. What are you going to use the AI for, right? And about 6 years ago, the HR department in IBM, the leader of the HR department, said, "I'm really going to start using AI with a vengeance." And the advantage there is that it's controllable. So a couple of examples of what specifically I mean by that is you can make sure that you're using your large language model within your own firewall. So you're not using a ChatGPT, a shared large language model. Therefore, what you're putting in or what the questions are or the answers going out aren't being shared with anybody else. That makes it more reliable. It also means that what you're doing is that you're feeding in IBM information about our IBM policies or rules or salary scales and things like that. But you're not sharing it with anyone else, but also the answers become much more reliable because the LLM is helping form the answer, but the information in which it's answering the actual question is proper data, data that you can be sure of. The other aspect of it is that you can, IBM and other companies will offer you curated large language models. So we will stand over the provenance of the data that was used to create the large language model, and therefore you don't have to worry about any IP infringements, right? So again, that gets rid of one of the other issues that's been raised here. You mentioned, Richie, about traceability. Use a large language model that offers the ability to trace where the answer came from, what is it dependent on. And then a theme that has come up multiple times is that the human isn't taken out of this. So you use the large language, don't use a large language model to make a decision, you use a large language model to help a decision maker. And the example I talked in preparation for for this with my HR lead in Ireland, and HR, as part of that Let's Use AI, a few years ago introduced models that will help recommend whether somebody is promoted and what their pay increase should be, right? I did ask him what the algorithm was for the pay increase, and I'm happy to share it for a small price later on, so you'll all know how to maximize your value in your firm. But interestingly, he said when the thing about promotions first came in about 5 years ago, he thought that's a load of baloney, right? And then he told me about 6 months ago when I'd recommended a fairly significant pay rise for somebody, his judgment was that wasn't the right thing to do, and she left about 2 months ago. So interesting, his view of it had moved, but the key point is it's still, look, it's most of the time you must use humans in the model, never take the human out of it when it's an important decision, and I think that's the last way, and we've all mentioned it already. That's how you ensure more reliability. But the use case, use a controlled use case, and let it grow from there.
Okay, thanks, Seamus. I think we're out of time, so I was hoping we take one question. Great. Okay, we take one question from the floor. It's a gentleman here in the middle has his hand up.
Yeah, hi, my name is Cathal. I'm founder of a edtech company called Acorn Star. We've been working a lot with universities throughout Europe, developing extended reality solutions for teaching photonics and integrated circuits and so on and so forth. And some of the applications we built is around shrinking students down to it's like, sorry, professor, I shrunk the students. So we get them down to a really miniature level so they can understand what's going on and fathom some of these things that are pretty wild. Using photons in integrated circuits is pretty crazy. But we're now working on some of our AI courses. But one of the things that we started working in augmented reality in 2018, and it goes from everything from unconscious bias, stepping into people's shoes, to technology. It's very widespread. But when you look at AI, I did, and it could be hallucination, we used some of the, I did a quick crunching of numbers. So if you look at Moore's law, doubling of processors every 2 years, halves in the cost. Right now with NVIDIA and their use of AI in developing the chips that are implementing the technology we're talking about, that's gone out the window. The exponential growth of the technology that's powering this, if you compute it or do an analogy with a family car, by 2030, that family car would have the power of a Saturn V rocket. 1.32 million horsepower, 2030. That's what we're looking at. So it's great but the society, the impacts on this to make sure that we as a country are implementing this, we're not left behind. A guy in the top of the Himalayas with a phone can implement this now. That we need to have dynamic training. So it changes. It needs to be very sophisticated. And I'm wondering, how are those challenges in getting that level of sophisticated training to society so Ireland Inc. isn't left behind? How is that going to be managed?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we will take Damian. Do you want to say something about that? I think.
Dr. McBride at the start mentioned that there's the democratization of AI, and whether, like a lot of these things, whether this is a good thing or not. When doctors suggest a treatment for you, you're supposed to give an informed consent as a patient. But if you don't really know what the condition is about or the treatment, how do you give informed consent? And in the same way with democracy, some people vote and do careful analysis of the candidates. Some people don't. I think it's going to be the same with AI. It's there for everyone. Some people will use it as a very blunt instrument, and incorrectly, let's face it, others won't. I think from an Ireland point of view, legislation is the most important instrument we have to make sure that not only as a preventative measure, but as a measure to encourage people to use it correctly. I like the idea of everybody being trained on it. I think the fact that in the Leaving Cert we've got a computer science course now means we can equip people with the basic understanding of it. For me, what I always say to the students is, the problem with AI for me is that it's based on a data set which is probably a vague approximation of reality. Then the system learns a model which is an approximation of the data set, which is an approximation of reality. And then we evaluate those models, which is an approximation of the model, which is an approximation of the data set, which is an approximation of reality. So it's all a bit of an approximation. What's exciting about the AI Act and GDPR, it asks questions like, should we be doing this? How are we doing it? Richie mentioned about 175 zettabytes of data. The question GDPR asks for me, most excitingly, is what are we doing collecting this goofy data? In the 1970s and 80s, we didn't have any of this data. I remember when I was in college, my lecturer saying, someday we'll have 1 terabyte of data in the world. I'm not sure if it
now
even...
you have that on your phone.
Absolutely, indeed. Is it even remotely justified? There's the wonderful examples like predicting maybe the possibility of a staff member leaving, or the famous example of Target sending out, congratulations, you're pregnant to a young lady before she was aware she was pregnant. Or because the nature of the foods she was buying, the foods that would require more whatever. And even the beer and nappies example is our favorite one, that supermarkets found that beer and nappies are purchased very frequently together on Friday evening. That happens. The system told them that, but then they had to go to the checkout counters to say, why is this happening? And generally it was because if there was a married couple with a young baby and one of them was working, one of them was at home, the one who was working after goes to the supermarket on the way home and says, do we need anything for home? And the answer would be from the partner at home, we need more nappies. So the person who had been working all week would buy lots of beer as well. So as a consequence of that, supermarkets started doing beer and nappy package sales and increased their sales by a lot. We can find out a lot of interesting stuff, but we still needed the people at the till to explain it in a way. And we need that explainability.
Which I think echoes Seamus' point about making sure the human is always in the loop. But your question about how we grapple with education and how we reconfigure education in order to keep on top of this is a really a pertinent one. Okay, I think we're out of time. Can I thank the panel for that excellent discussion?
Thank you. As we conclude this episode, it's clear that the integration of artificial intelligence into education and training is reshaping the landscape in profound ways. Our panellists, Seamus McGrath from IBM Consulting, Gemma Dunn from Intel, and Damian Gordon from TU Dublin, have shared invaluable insights into how AI is being utilised to enhance learning experiences, streamline content creation, and address the challenges faced by educators and learners alike. As we move forward, it's essential to continue these conversations, ensuring that AI is leveraged responsibly and effectively to create more dynamic, inclusive, and forward-thinking educational environments. Thank you for joining us, and if you would like to chat with any of the team at the Enterprise Academy about future collaborations, please do get in touch. You will find our contact details in the podcast show notes. Until next time, thank you for tuning in.